Hello and welcome to today's Studio Army Review, where I'm going to introduce you to my Tau Army. And back when I started getting into this with my sons, back in 2011, and not knowing anything about 40K, my sons and I, trying to figure out what are we going to do. For me, it was a little bit harder because if I'm going to put this kind of money in, I wanted to make sure it was something I would really enjoy and get behind. And since I was building models again in this type of a hobby, I really wanted to enjoy what I was going to build. So we researched all the different factions, and I realized that I didn't want to do Space Marines because everybody did Space Marines, and I didn't want to do what everybody else did. Didn't really get a feel for who did what around where I live because I hadn't got plugged into the game shop or the actual gaming days that had been going on. It was a high school teacher at my son's high school that kind of introduced us to this whole concept, and he played Space Marines primarily, but he had tons of other armies, so he tried to get his students to kind of pick up the game. So I really didn't have a good sense of who was doing what, but I really wanted to get a feel for learn what it could be that I could really get my teeth into. So I decided, since my playstyle is more leaning towards shooting, I would try to find an army that's more of a shooty type army than an assault one. That goes back to the 80s when I first started wargaming, and it was all World War II or earlier type battles, ship to ship, air combat. It was all shooting. Even the infantry battles I had, or games I had, the close combat that was there, it was always a costly way of trying to win a game, because you're just as likely to get killed yourself as you were to kill the opponent. So I kind of learned to focus more on the shooting style. Well, as I did research, I ran across the Tau and the fluff of the Tau, and it kind of really touched something in me. It made sense. They were highlighted as a mobile army, a very shooting kind of a focus, and it just meshed with what I wanted to do. This sounded like what I would enjoy playing. And then, of course, I love the look of the vehicles themselves, and the Fire Warriors models specifically as infantry. I think that they really capture the flavor of very sci-fi, super, we call it a futuristic type of a warrior. So it captured my attention, and my imagination started to go from there. And when I got to the point of seeing the Forge World type models, the flyers, just on looks, I thought, yeah, this is going to be great. Well, it turned out that not only did it sound as a perfect fit, it really was. The problem was trying to find a cheap way to get the models to start an army, especially when my son's wanting to start with Space Marines. There wasn't a starter set that did both of those together, and starting out with was kind of a cost prohibitive. So in 2011, we actually went with the Assault on Black Reach to get the Orcs and Space Marines to get him started. So it really wasn't until 2012 when I first got my Tau models. Now, that was back in the 5th edition, when they weren't nearly as strong as they are now. And I basically got a Devilfish, two squads of Fire Warriors, a squad of Crew, and a Commander, which really was just a crisis suit. So it's a very, very minimal army, but it did give me a good taste of what it was to fight as a Tau. And I lost a lot of battles, but I learned a lot in the process, and was able to borrow that one teacher's other Tau units to kind of test out some of the other units I might be interested in. So it worked out really nice, and it turned out that it gave me the chance to learn how to use a small force of Tau and find where their real strengths are and figure out how to cover some of their weaknesses at the time. Remember, this is 5th edition when I came into this, and it was a 4th edition codex that I was working from. Well, anyway, just like in the fluff, I rely, when I play Tau, on a more mobile style in most of my games. I do not use really gun lines at all. I will use a unit or two of that would, I guess, might look like a gun line because they're a unit of guns, but they're there as the lure. or the anvil in my particular tactics and strategy. In a subsequent video, I'll talk about the actual Tau Tactica of the one of the methods that they've used. That it's not the Montka or the Kinyon. It's what hasn't been named yet, but it's about encirclement, and that's one that I particularly favor. So I deal with a lot of mobile forces and try to outflank and deep strike, get around the enemy after luring them into some point on the table where I want them to be, to kind of get them where they're kind of on the back foot then. So you'll see, if you do see, when I finally get into doing bat reps, you'll see my play style is completely different than a lot of Tau players. In fact, that's one of the things they say about me at my local game areas. I don't play Tau the way everybody else does, so I kind of think that's cool. But what I did play one game, though, where it was a gun line. And I'll see if I can weave pictures of it into this video. But it was a blast, because from a narrative perspective, here was a long gun line of Kroot and Tau with there was one hammerhead, and there was, I think, a broadside just backing them up, and it was just on this onslaught of Tyranid swarms and monstrous creatures coming, and it was just neat to just watch the waves come at me and then break, and then eventually they did come to a point where they did breach the line, and it was just a fun game, very narrative. I did lose. Wasn't, again, this is back before the newest edition, so didn't have a lot of the shenanigans available. Yeah, but it was kind of fun. But I did notice it wasn't my style. I like to move around a lot more, so that's kind of why you see kind of the models you do in front of you. A lot of vehicles, and I'll talk more in the next few videos about how I utilize the forces I've got. Now, most of these were bought secondhand. There were a few kits that I did buy just to bolster some numbers, and I'll talk about those in future videos. But to give you a backstory for what you see in front of you, I had to come up with my own sept, because I didn't like the color schemes that were out there. They didn't have the right feel to it. And of course, I like writing those backstories. I used to be a game master years and years ago, and I loved coming up with stories for the players to run through. So, in the wake of the Damocles Gulf Crusade, there was a withdrawal of all the Imperial forces to face a Tyranid invasion. A lot of the Imperial worlds were actually abandoned. So, the Tau second expansion really was pretty much just move in where the Empire left and just take over what the refuse of the Imperial retreat. So a lot of those worlds still willingly joined the Tau, but there was one this is actually the world that my Imperial Guard army is from, that actually decided they were going to actively engage the Tau to make an alliance and stage a military coup on their planet. So that's how I tie my Imperial Guard and Tau together, so that I can actually have them on the table as allies with a story to go with it. Well, so as a result of this extended interaction between the Tau and these Imperial rebels in this one system that the Tau moved into, they realized that it would be beneficial to establish a sept world in that system, because they would be immediately available to a close proximity of trading and raw materials from other planet, while they're establishing their own sept world on the third planet from the sun. And the additional benefit was that in the agreement, this Imperial world would be able to maintain their own military as an ally to the Tau, kind of like the Kroot and some of the other races are kind of allies. This one planet was part of this sept's ally structure and could use their own equipment. So they figured if the Imperial nubs come back, they've got additional allies to throw at that. There was, of course, at the beginning there was a lot of superstition, but suspicion about were these humans just trying to buy their time? They're going to be actually loyal to the Tau, but over time that did prove out to be true. But anyway, over the past 2 centuries, since the Damocles Gulf Crusade, the Tau and the humans have actually created a successful interplanetary political and economical system. So this world is, or the Sept, is the P'lska Sept. Again, taking the Tau, corrupting the name slightly to make it more Tau. They took the human name of the system, and so it's the P'lska system, or P'lska Sept. It's now thriving, it's self-sufficient, has its own identity, and they will definitely be defending to the last human, not necessarily the last Tau, but to the last human, that Sept area. The Tau are noted for being able to just leave a planet if things go bad and come back later when it's more appropriate. But anyway, this Sept world that I've created is part of the. It's, even though it was actually created and established between the two phases, expansion phases, second and third, it's counted among the third expansion septs, because that's really when it came into its own, and actually was part of Shadow Sun's forces as they went off to conquer and expand the Tau Empire yet again. Alright, so I hope this kind of gives you a background of where I'm headed with my Tau army. I'm going to go through the videos the next few times, going over general groups of units. A lot of people, they know the Tau units, and so I'm not going to go into a lot of details about some of them, because, you know, Fire Warrior is a Fire Warrior, and you use it like you use a Fire Warrior. So there's not a whole lot of depth to those types of things. You know, why do I use this versus this? They don't have a whole lot of weapon options and such. So the videos you're going to see as I go through this army are going to take things a little differently, looking more at some of the combinations of some of the tactics I use, and why I build a force out of the various units, as opposed to showcasing the special properties of Pathfinders, for example. I will talk more about how I use them compared to how they come out of the book. So anyway, hope this gives you a good sense of where I'm headed. Share, like, and subscribe. Go ahead and comment below on anything you might want to say about the Tau. Please keep it positive, though. I know right now they are way, way overpowered. And in fact, I prefer not playing their current formations, with one exception. But I'll get to that in one of my subsequent videos on why that particular formation is one that I do enjoy. But yeah, I don't like their new Hunter Contingent, I think they call it. Yeah, it's just, that's way too OP. And I'm a Tau player, so I tend not to use that. I'll go with the typical CAD, or maybe that one formation I'll talk about. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Share, like, and subscribe, and go ahead, and I will see you in the next Studio Army review for the Tau. Thanks for watching. Bye.